Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Winston Crisp. I'm the Vice President for Student Affairs here at USC. I will let Dr. Siegel and Dr. Van Orman introduce themselves.
I'm Steve Siegel, Chair of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences, and a USC student's parent.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Sarah Van Orman. I'm the Chief Health Officer for USC Student Health.
We very much appreciate everyone taking the time to spend with us today. We are here, we know, because our community has experienced a number of heartbreaking student losses this semester. There are many, many questions and concerns that have risen from that, and we want to do what we can to begin to answer as many of the questions as we can because we are all in this together and we all want as healthy a student community as we can possibly have. So we're going to spend the most of this time trying to answer the questions that you have put forward to us, but I remind people that this will just be a beginning, and we are going to continue to pursue this with everything that we have as long as we can. So the first question is, we know that there are a number of parents who are concerned about these deaths and what information has been released or not. Here's what we can tell you about the situation, and I'm going to ask Dr. Van Orman to begin.
Yeah, thank you, Vice President Crisp. So we know that we have unfortunately lost 9 students since the beginning of this academic year. We also know that we believe in 3 of those cases it was a death by suicide. We also know in the other cases that we have no reason to believe that it was related to suicide. In each of those cases, though, it's very important to understand that regardless of the numbers, each of those students is a loss that's felt by our community, by our families, by our faculty, and by our staff. When that happens, we know many people are anxious to get information about what exactly happened. They want to know the details. As a university, we're committed to sharing what we can share, to provide when there's misinformation, to correcting that information. But we also know in the majority of cases, we may not know the cause of death, or that may be something that the family wishes us not to share for reasons of privacy. But what we want to do today is to talk about what we're doing to support our community and our students, and because we know that when a community experiences any death, but particularly a number that come in such rapid succession, it's incredibly impactful to everyone. And that's what we're here to talk about today.
Another question that is what are students dying from and why aren't you giving us more information? And I think in some ways Dr. Van Orman has begun to answer that question. And part of it is that we are not in a position to be able to give information that we don't have. Sometimes we think we know what the cause is, but we don't have coroner's decisions, we don't have toxicology reports or anything else, and we cannot give information that we don't know. That is also combined with the issue of the privacy of the families involved and what information they have and we have access to. But and I'd also like to have Dr. Van Orman or Dr. Siegel talk a little bit about the concerns about releasing too much information that drive some of our policy.
Absolutely.
So we know that there's grief. We know that people want to understand. We also know that when we talk about death a lot, it can have a contagious effect on our community. It can actually exacerbate the stress and strife that people are going through. And so we want to be mindful that it's important to think about being respectful to the student that passed and their family. It's also important that we think about the impact of how we speak about that on the greater community, trying to help people heal during that process.
And I just want to follow up on that with what Dr. Siegel said. Our priority is to protect the health and safety of every student on our campus. So, as you mentioned, a lot of our communication is structured around that. I also want to share, though, my commitment, and I think it's shared with Dr. Siegel and Vice President Crisp, that if and when we identify something that might be a risk to our students, a safety risk, we communicate that as quickly and as accurately and as rapidly as we can. And all of us here are continually monitoring the situation and trying to identify and share when we identify something that might be a potential risk to our students.
And I do think that has a lot to do with our strategy and how we communicate, and can be changing as this situation continues to evolve. And so while we will be prepared to talk about trends or things that we think or that we might think we see, we just are not going to be able to satisfy people's curiosity in individual cases all of the time about what has happened. So how do the number of deaths at USC this year compare to other universities, other years?
Yeah, so that's a question that we've been receiving a lot. I think one of the things that's hard about the number is that it's something that can vary a lot based on a lot of circumstances. We know that if we look back over the past decade or so, in any given year at USC, we maybe experience anywhere between 4 and 15 deaths within our student community. We're a very large community of over 40,000 students. That number over time has varied, but the overall trends really compare to what we see at other universities of our size and structure.
Although having said that, I do think the proximity and the compressed time period in which we've experienced these losses is different, is somewhat unique at this time. We have talked to colleagues at schools all over the country, and right now, no one is experiencing the compactness of the number of student tragic losses that we've had in a short period of time. And that is new. That's also new for us.
I think that's right.
The next question is somewhat of a change of subject, so I want to acknowledge that. What is the university doing to stop referring patients off-site?
I think Dr. Siegel is probably best positioned to answer that.
Thank you. So, as many of you know, counseling models across the country really rely on a brief intervention and then continuing care in the community. But more than a year ago, USC recognized that this was really an issue here, that it's difficult to find care in Los Angeles, and that although we could refer people out, this created a significant barrier to their access. And so over a year ago, we began an effort to build a student mental health practice right here on campus that students could be referred to so that there was easy access on site where they could get their continuing care. In fact, that new practice will be right in the same building as student health on the 5th floor. It opens next week, and it will be staffed with 18 psychiatrists and psychologists that are specifically dedicated to the care of your children. And this represents really a new model. It's not something that you find other places. And it reflects how USC recognized in the past that we had to address a systematic issue, something that's present all over the country, but fix it here so that we could really take care of our students and our children.
I think those of us who work with students across campus, and particularly at Student Health and in student counseling and mental health services, have over the years recognized how challenging it was when students were referred off and the gaps that existed. So I think what Dr. Siegel and his team and the commitment of the university to build that has been really outstanding, and we hope will really close the gap for many students who need long-term care. The one thing I would say, though, is I want to be really clear to every family member now who's concerned about their student who might be experiencing depression, anxiety, thoughts of harm. Even though we are working to build this long-term solution, we have immediate care available here on our campus. A student can walk in or call 24 hours a day. They can't walk in 24 hours a day. They can call 24 hours a day. They can walk in while we're here and let us know that they're in need, and they will see a licensed faculty member from the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences for that urgent need. I don't want any student or any family member to feel like their student is in need and we're not here for them. So please let us know if there's concerns. I think both Dr. Siegel and I are incredibly committed to making sure every student who needs care gets it in the moment that they need it.
Absolutely.
The next question changes the subject again. So, but before we do that, I want to follow up because on this subject, I've been hearing a lot. We've been hearing a lot from parents, from others, about instances where students are reporting that they go because they are seeking help and they are either turned away or left wanting or not treated in a way that people feel is warranted. And I'd like to have you address that, both your sense of that, but also what things we are doing to ensure that every student gets real live person to talk to in the way that they should.
Yeah.
So this is an incredibly important issue and one that we want to address. We recognize that the current system that's been in place and is in place in many universities, if not most, is that students are offered a phone or in-person screen. Their needs are assessed, and then they're either offered immediate intake if they're urgent or referred out. But we recognize that the times have changed, the needs have changed, and the models of care have to change with them. And so we're working towards achieving a state where every student will be offered an in-person intake, not just a triage assessment, but actual intake and access to care, whether that be inside student health, upstairs in our psychiatry and psychology practice, or helping them find other resources if that's their preference. So we want to move very rapidly to a system where every student can be seen in person and brought into a system of care at point of contact, not after a referral.
Anything to add, Sarah?
Yeah, no, I think what Dr. Siegel shared is really resonates with our goals. We know that for many students, when we would do a consultation and then provide them with referrals, what we hear and we know what families hear is that someone opened up, they got up the courage to come in to talk to someone, and we turned them away. And while our team always assesses for risks, always asks these kinds of questions, I think that doesn't change how that interaction felt to the student and feels to the student. And so I think we recognize that, we know that, and that is we have such a commitment to changing that. So every student who comes in feels cared for, feels connected, and we've had a significant growth in our resources. The university has added 12 new positions just this fall. Those positions have come to work for us. And by doing that, that is going to allow us to really provide that in-person intake connection to every student that comes in through our doors. And now with the opening of the 5th floor practice for those students who need long-term care, we're going to have a place where they can receive that care that isn't across town, that isn't a train or an Uber away, but rather is just right upstairs, and it's care provided by our own Department of Psychiatry, so we can ensure that it's the highest quality, appropriate care.
Thank you. The next question is, how is USC addressing drug and alcohol issues that arise on campus? I'd like to take a half step back from that direct question, because I think it does need to be recognized that, notwithstanding what we have to say about not being able to talk about causes and needing to be sure, and we're not the coroner's office and all of these other things, it doesn't change the fact that when we believe or when we have reason to suspect different kinds of things being involved, that we can and should talk about that. So I do think we do need to begin to address with you a little this issue of drugs. Sarah, would you like to?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a really good question. And earlier in the conversation, I said that our goal is to share with you anything we know that might be appropriate or helpful to protect student safety. And one of the things that we are concerned about, or we've heard about, are reports that we've had some students that may have experienced a drug overdose. Now, that information is coming to us in some of the ways it may be coming to our students and to our families. And so it's important that while we may not have confirmation on any of it, that we address what we know about the risks of drug use in our community and some specific things, actions that students can take. We're actually planning to send a communication out to our student community actually just this afternoon to raise some of the awareness. We know that there are specific risks associated with many kinds of drug use, either prescription drugs that are misused or used not by prescription, or by other kinds of illicit drugs that are available in our community. Those risks are particularly significant when we're talking about medications that fall into the group of medicines called opioids, and those are prescription painkillers and then medications like heroin, other kinds of opioids. We also know that in the United States over the last few years, there's been a rise in illegally produced fentanyl, which is an extremely powerful opioid. We know that there are reports in the overall United States that particular medication is being mixed into other kinds of drugs that somebody might use recreationally without their knowledge. That is a very dangerous situation and has been associated with a large number of overdoses and in many cases deaths. So it's really important that all students and families are aware of the risk posed by misusing any kind of medication or illicit substance, but in particular opioids, and in particular illicit drugs where that may be mixed with something without their knowledge. This is further exacerbated, we know, when those medications are mixed with alcohol. So I think it's important for us to have the conversation with our students. We also think it's really important that families begin to have this conversation with their students as well. I know, Dr. Siegel, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would just reiterate, this is, it's challenging to talk to your kids about drugs, but it's better to do it before. So talk to your kids.
And I do think we are going to be mounting campaigns around awareness, education, all of the things that we know how to do, that we can think of to do, to raise awareness and to educate our students to the risks involved, especially when you are mixing drugs with alcohol or taking them from sources that you don't necessarily know of, or in large amounts at parties and things. We're going to be talking directly to our students. We will be sharing what we say with them, with you all, because as Dr. Siegel and Dr. Van Orman said, I think we all have to be engaged together in getting the message out about the need to be focused on drug and alcohol awareness. This nation, as well as this campus, and I'll be the first to admit it, has significant cultural issues around alcohol use and abuse, as well as some of these other drugs, and we're going to have to begin to talk about these things. Anybody who knows me knows that I talk incessantly about the risks involved with students with the overconsumption of and the abuse of alcohol and how widely that comes across. So there are a few things more important to me than trying to deal with this, because there's nothing more important to me than the health of our students. The screen went dim, so I can't read the next question. I apologize. Many of us in the group talk about our children's experiences years ago. What has changed in student health to be more accessible? I think we've begun to talk about that, but if you want to maybe take that a little bit more, or...
Yeah, I mean, I think we can just reiterate that in the last year, we've increased the number of counselors available. We're changing the way that we interact with students right from the get-go. We are looking at different ways to increase services without compromising quality. So we're going to ask for your patience. We can just go faster, but we want to make sure that we are delivering the same quality of care for the students that we care for, that we have always wanted. And by creating this new practice that allows us to refer students more easily, we're also hoping that that will open up more room sort of at the front door, right? If you have a place to send people, then you can be more welcoming at the gate. So putting it all together, we're hoping very much and planning and acting in a way to facilitate better access, more care, and longer-term care right here at USC.
I think it's so important that we've been able to get the resources to do this. I think it's going to make a real difference in our students' health and well-being and our ability to support them. As Dr. Siegel mentioned, a lot of those things are being built as we speak. But as I mentioned earlier, I also just want to be really clear with any student or family member that if they need help right now and they come in and let us know that, we are there for them. We are concerned about them, and that we have immediate help available for students who are experiencing distress, who are experiencing any thoughts of self-harm. The other resource I'll mention is the students can certainly come to student health, to our counseling and mental health services. I'll also mention to family members that there is another office on campus that's really helpful. There's a program called Trojans Care for Trojans, and they have both a phone number as well as an online form where community members, students, and family members who can contact them and let them know if they're worried about their student. And we encourage family members to do that. That office will reach out to the student, ask them if they can support them. And we'll make sure at the end, I know it's been posted before, but we'll make sure that's posted on the Facebook group when this session's over.
Two other things about that and why this is so important from my perspective. I appreciate that people have had experiences that make them feel distrustful towards what we're doing, and I appreciate what Dr. Siegel and Dr. Van Orman have to say. But I want to be very just straightforward with everybody watching and everyone listening, right? We need our students to access the help that we provide. And the longer that we have narratives out that suggest to people that they shouldn't go or can't go, then I believe that's very detrimental to our students. So my ask is that if you have an experience, or if your student has an experience that they relate to you that suggests that they did not get treated in the manner that you think they should have or that they think they should have, we need to know that immediately. That is not the way our policy, that is not our process. Every student should be met, as we're talking about, by a live person, treated with the dignity and respect that they deserve. That is what has to happen. And that is the narrative that we need to have. So anything that takes away from that narrative, we need to know about so that we can investigate and that we can make sure that we fix. It is so critical that as we bring all of these things online and as we make these changes, that people do not turn away from seeking out the help that they need because of things that they've heard that happened in the past. Now, to be clear, I'm not suggesting that things like that won't happen or don't happen in the present. What I'm suggesting is that we definitely need to hear about it when it happens so that we can make sure that the way that we are supposed to be meeting and greeting and dealing with our students is in every case the way that happens. That is so critically important that I simply felt like I had to say that.
I think that's so important, Winston. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that's exactly what I think I would say for myself, and I'm sure for Dr. Siegel as well. And the good part is, we know that every day there are many students who are experiencing a high level of concern that actually come in every single day and get help. And we are so happy that those students make that choice for themselves. Sometimes it's with the encouragement of their families. And we want to get that message out to our students as well, that there are many, many USC students every day reaching out for help, and whether that's to their friends, to their faculty, or to counseling and mental health services here at USC Student Health. It's the right thing to do. It is a possible thing to do, and that there is help here for them.
Thank you, Dr. Van Orman. The second point that I wanted to make about all of this is one of the things that impacts the times and how quickly students can be seen is the fact that given the number of tragedies that we've had this semester, our counselors are also out and about all over the community doing the work of touching people and reaching out to people and talking to people. And we've taken the counseling out of the building into the schools, into the fraternities and sororities, wherever we need it. That obviously does impact our ability to see people on site, and we recognize that, and we are taking steps to deal with that as well. Dr. Siegel, just a little bit on that?
Please.
Sure.
So as Dr. Crisp mentioned, we have this challenge of out in the community and here to help. And so it turns out that people all over USC have come together to offer their help. Faculty members in the School of Social Work, Psychology, and our masters in family and marriage and family counseling, psychologists outside of student counseling in the Department of Psychiatry, but also in neurology, anesthesia, and family medicine, have all come forward and volunteered to help in this time of crisis. And so as we're facing this period of really tremendous grief in our community, it's really been gratifying to see so many people from different schools, from different departments, just reach out and ask what they can do to help because of their concern for our kids, your kids. And so it's really been heartwarming. And I know that those people care, just like the people who work here in student health care. And that's the other thing I would just add, which is the people who work in student counseling went into this because of a profound dedication to the care of students. When your students come in here, they will be met by somebody who's really dedicated their life to this and has empathy and knowledge and is really, really here for the students above all else. So we hope that you hear that. We hope that your children hear that and that they come to get the help and support they need.
And part of that is what we're trying to do is use all of that volunteering. And I don't want to promise things that aren't done, but we're working towards using all of those trained volunteers to do a lot of that outreach work that the counselors are currently doing so that we can pull the counselors back into counseling to very much speed up our ability to work with students. That's in progress. The next question, which I think flows right from this, thank you, is if our child is reluctant to seek help but needs it, and I assume that is, but we are convinced they need it. What is the best way to help him or her?
So I might think of this, and I'll mention some resources, and then I know Dr. Siegel might as well. I kind of think of this as kind of on three levels. So we know that we have students where you might see your student struggling. Maybe you notice that they're not participating in activities, they are withdrawing, they're calling with signs of concern or frustration. And we have available, and we'll post on the Facebook Live site, something called the Thrive Guide. And I think it's got a really great set of information for students and for parents about how to start those conversations. So, talking to your student about asking open-ended questions, asking them what some of their goals are, asking them how they're feeling, providing that space for them just to share what might be going on, and then providing them the information about resources on campus and how they can access those resources. I also think, though, it's really important for parents to know what to do if they have a higher level concern, and how they can help, recognize the signs that it may not just be that their student's struggling, but there's real concerns that their student may be expressing thoughts of hopelessness, expressing thoughts of that they might, want to harm themselves, that they might be better off dead, that they're withdrawing from things. And I think it's really appropriate for families to recognize that if they have that their student is really in great difficulty. There are a couple other resources that are available. One is the Trojans Care for Trojans, which is ran through the Office of Crisis and Wellness. Again, I mentioned that parents, families can call and let us know that they're concerned about their student. Finally, our Department of Public Safety operates 24/7, and any family member is concerned about the imminent risk to their student, the Department of Public Safety can be contacted, and we'll also provide their information. So that question, there's a lot of different levels on which that question could be answered, and there's a lot of different responses. But I just want to make sure families are aware that regardless of what level they're experiencing it, whether it's just about asking those questions and then helping and guiding them to resources, whether it's about asking someone on campus to reach out to them, or whether it's asking for for a immediate intervention, that's all available here, and those are resources to help your student.
And I think particularly from the non-clinical standpoint and from a parent myself, I think sometimes it is about trying to understand what are the reasons behind the student's reluctance. So I think we have to try to pry into what is the reluctance, because it can be a number of things. They can be reluctant to seek help because they don't believe they're going to get it. Some of the things that we've been talking about, they could be reluctant because they're worried about being stigmatized, or they think if someone finds out that they went to get help, that somehow is going to stigmatize them. They could simply be afraid. They don't want to think of themselves as other than completely healthy and in control. And I could go on. There are all kinds of reasons that students often have, and young people often have, for not wanting to seek help. And trying to understand that is a part of it, and spending a lot of time talking to people about the positivity of seeking help, and that it's never a bad thing to seek help. It is a good thing, and the most successful people out there do seek help when they need it. But beyond trying to get down to the reasoning that an individual student might have for not wanting to seek help, I think the last part of what Dr. Van Orman talked about is important too. If you're, as a parent, and the hairs on the back of your neck are standing up because you believe that there's something wrong, you need to trust in that instinct. We are never going to be able to know your student as well or as intimately as you do. to be able to understand them. And when you have those times when the hair is standing on the back of your neck and you really think that your student needs help, but you can't convince them, or you're reluctant, or they are reluctant, to seek out that help, we need you to let us know. In any way that you can, let us know, so that we can do things to try to reach out. And we have ways that we can try to reach out and assess and figure out what's going on with students that is not your mother told us to check on you or your father told us to check on you, which will sometimes anger the students towards the parents. But the key is we need to know what you know, so that together we can figure out how to get the student to help and make sure that that happens.
Yeah, and I think that's so important, Winston, to reinforce. And again, we'll make sure those resources are posted. I want to return to what you were saying, though, about reasons that students don't seek help. And I think I'd like to address one of the common ones I hear. I don't know what your experience is that they're too busy. They're too overwhelmed with their academic work. And one of the things we hear from students a lot is that they feel that they can't take time away, that they can't talk to faculty and staff about maybe if they're struggling because of either a physical health condition or a mental health condition, to get support. And that they really are kind of get caught up in a cycle of the academic cycle and the need to kind of do their projects and their papers and their classes, and don't have time to step away and take care of themselves. I think that's also a really important thing for families to know, and to also know that we actually have resources here on campus. If a student is struggling, needs to take time to care for themselves, there's support available to help, look at extensions, to look for academic accommodations, to work with faculty. So that is something that students often feel very caught in, and it's one of the things that I think families can be really helpful with is helping that student problem solve through and recognize that they can still be very successful as students when at times they need to step back a little bit and take care of themselves. Our students are here because they're smart and they're talented and they're passionate about the work that they're doing. And sometimes that can get out of balance with their need to take care of themselves.
Next question is, are professors and TAs trained to recognize struggling students and how to handle the situation? What training are they getting? How do we get faculty to participate in student well-being? That is a wonderful question, or a wonderful number of questions. From my perspective, and I've been at USC, I don't know how many of you know this, but I've been at USC just about 3 months now. And from my perspective, we do provide training at some level, but I don't think it's enough. I think that this is an area, and I will just be straightforward, I think this is an area, and I think there's agreement in the senior administration and others that we need to be doing better about having our entire community engaged and involved in working towards the health of our students. And I don't believe that the training that our professors and TAs get has been sufficient to keep up with the increasing needs and the cultural shifts that are happening across the country and in this school. So we are currently engaged in developing training modules and working through the provost's office to reach out to the deans of the schools to enlist everybody in an effort and a campaign to make sure that every staff member, it's not just professors and TAs, it's the hundreds and hundreds and even thousands of staff members who care deeply about our students, but may not always think that they know what to do. So we are developing that training and we'll be working with the deans and with the provost's office to try to do a great deal more with that than we have in the past. What is the university doing to foster a feeling of community and family in this time of need? That's also a good question. I think that, this is a fairly unique time in the history of this university. And we are on the cusp of significant sort of change, significant culture change. There's new leadership, there's new people all over the place. We are looking at the culture and trying to figure this out. But we know that some of the things that our students have to deal with can be a sense of isolation. This is a very big university, 40-some thousand students. So we know that they have to deal at times with sense of loneliness, with sense of isolation, with sense that they're alone. And we need to build that community. That's going to happen in a number of ways. It's already happening in a number of ways. We have offices all over the campus that are just trying to figure out how to build that community. I'm trying to work on a parents' council or a parents' advisory group that would allow us to bring parents back into the fold in a better way to help us engage in these efforts. And we're going to have to be comprehensive and university level to get to this sense of community. We've already begun to start by trying to work on the culture of this place, by trying to create. We are also working on trying to create better spaces to bring students, to bring members of the community together. We are trying to foster conversations. We're probably going to create a series of town halls and other things like that. But again, I don't want to make promises about things that aren't actually set in stone yet. But we are working hard on this. It's a critical issue. It's a very large university that has very distinct schools and things that people are studying. And so we have to figure out a way to better enhance that which ties us together. And I don't know that we have time right now with me facing the camera to get into the specifics of that. I do understand the question, and we will find ways to get more of that information out to you.
And just as a follow-up on that, I think that's so important that because we know that a caring community is a critical thing, and people who feel connected to a community, they thrive and they have better mental health. One of the other thoughts or things I'll mention to families as you work with your students, though, through this time is that what we see is our students care deeply about each other. And many of what we see as far as students reaching out is not reaching out because they're feeling, particular, their own needs, but they're concerned about a fellow student. And that is an amazing, powerful thing that we have in the community of care we have among our students. We also know that during times like this, sometimes that burden can feel a lot to those students that are maybe talking to a friend that's experienced a lot or supporting a friend. So I think that's also a really important conversation to families to have. Is your student feeling overburdened, is concerned about the people around them? And so we as leadership and student services want to help students know how to help a friend, but we also want them to feel that they can actually reach out and talk to the leadership, folks in our Dean of Students office, folks at the health service, so that they don't have to feel like they're carrying the burden or struggling to help a friend in a way that they're not able to. So I would also leave that for families to have that conversation with their students during this time when we know so many students are hurting. How can they take care of themselves while they're taking care of their friends? And how can they support people while also making sure that they're getting their friends to the resources here on campus?
So I'm looking at the screen and being told that our time is coming to a close, but I wanted to address a couple of things quickly before we do that. One of them is I hope it becomes evident, but I want people to understand that notwithstanding how we may work through the issues of developing our policy and developing our process, and notwithstanding how complicated these issues get and whether or not we end up having agreements or disagreements about how we go about doing things, I want people to understand that we feel this. We feel this as deeply as you do. We are parents. We have given our life to this. I tell the story frequently that I can never look into the eyes of one of your students, one of your children, and not see my own looking back out at me. So I want you to understand, if nothing else, how much we care and how much this hurts us in the same way that it is hurting you, and how hard we are and will continue to work to be on top of this and to do everything that we possibly can so that everyone here has the healthy experience that we all want for them. And I wanted you to hear that. The second thing that I will say is that I understand and accept that we need to do better about communicating where we can, what we can, how we can, and we are committed to doing that. This is just a beginning. I understand that we didn't get to many of the questions that people posed in the time period that we had, and I understand that the time has not allowed us to get into some of the specificity that people might want. And so I do want to thank everybody for joining us today. We appreciate you pushing the questions into the Facebook Live site. We are going to do what we can to respond to them as we move forward. We are also going to continue to try to push different kinds of communications in different ways out to keep everybody as engaged in this together as we possibly can. So thank you all on behalf of all of us. We look forward to continuing the dialogue and continuing to work on this. But the one promise I make, we love them. We will never stop working for them. Thank you.